Well, I think Parliamentary Review does something very interesting. It provides a platform for people to share and express their views, and I hope we're going to be able to build on that even more so that people can interconnect with each other. But it also gives an opportunity for parliamentarians to know that people are taking interest in what they're doing and how they're doing it.
Hello and welcome to the Parliamentary Review podcast, the podcast that puts leadership in the fore. I'm Jonathan White, and in each episode I'm joined by directors, CEOs, CFOs, government ministers, chairmen, presidents, maybe one day even the head of Ofgem, that is, if we have power to record anything with. The aim is to discover who these people are, the people who get up each morning and make Britain work. We learn about the challenges facing the global economy, the latest going-ons in developmental psychology, and of course the innovation and success in the country that make it all worthwhile in the end. We also get their take on the current political and economic state of the country. Later on in this episode, you'll have the chance to hear our exclusive interview with Lord Blunkett, the former Home Secretary, former Education Secretary, and of course, the current co-chairman of the Parliamentary Review. But for now, we're joined by Rube Fernando, the Managing Director of the Ardmel Group, and has been with the company since 1979. Based in Fife, Ardmel has had over 30 years of successful innovation and development in designing, manufacturing machinery, the clothing, motor car and electronic industries. Rube came to the UK from Sri Lanka as a young man at the age of 23, and through hard work and innovation oversees a business that employs 1,200 people around the globe. Rube, welcome.
Hello. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello there. Thank you very much for joining us today. Now, it's been a good few months, in fact, since the Ardmel Group has been in the review. I think the listeners would love to know what you and the company have been up to since.
Well, we are manufacturing machines and selling them throughout the world, and in 63 countries.
It's an exceptional story. I hope you don't mind if I begin. I'm sure you won't. But you started at Ardmel in 1979, if that's right.
That's right, yeah.
Excellent. And you'd come here from Britain as a young man, joined Singers, the famous sewing machine company, and then I think it was at Geltech, who specialised in waterproof garments. You must have learned so much in that space of time before you got to Ardmel, mustn't you?
Oh, I have, yes.
And sorry, go ahead.
Basically, what I'm an engineer. What I did was mainly innovations, like, for example, tape sealing machines for seam sealing garments to make garments waterproof.
Excellent. And from those early years, the company, Ardmel itself, has changed so much. Could you tell us a little bit about the journey the company went on between when you started and what it's like today?
Basically, we started manufacturing machinery for the electronics industry. Then I developed the tape sealing machine, which became number one in the world. And at the same time, I also developed a machine called strip cutting machine to cut the webbing, etc., to exact size. And things evolved after that with various other machines. And then in 1989, I started a company to manufacture garments called Keela.
Yes. And from those early years, you took the conscious decision, I think, given the technology you had acquired and the knowledge you had, to turn to the global market.
I did, yes.
And obviously it's been a great success. How did you find this at first?
Quite dear. I mean, it was hard to begin with, but once,
I bet.
yeah. But once once I, showed, customers what it can do, I had no problem.
And just despite recessions over the years, despite other challenges, the company has gone from strength to strength in part. And I know that you're a believer that innovation is the key to success.
It is, yes.
Absolutely. And today the group, as you said, it exports to over 60 countries. Is there a key decision, or at least an important contributing one, that has led to the success of the company over the years, do you think?
No, basically, going and talking to customers, traveling, doing trade shows, showing everything we can do. Basically, and keeping the customer happy, making sure the machines don't break down. And this is, I have machines that are still working since 1983, some of the companies who have these machines.
And I hope they've got another 40 years left in them. Maybe But looking perhaps more broadly then, Rube, at the sector, with your experience as well, what do you think are the major challenges the sector is facing at the moment?
I mean, everything is a challenge. It's how you go about it. Nothing to do with anything else.
Absolutely.
The only thing what I got to say is, basically I've been trying, because we also make garments now.
Yes.
And the amount of corruption that is in this world with standards.
I know you're a big and strong believer in the importance of obtaining and maintaining standards in the industry. Yeah,
but the thing is, the standards are so, for example, I have proved, now Gore-Tex keeps saying, you heard of the company Gore-Tex, they keep saying
yes.
It's, breathable, etc., etc., etc. Nothing breathes in the rain or in the cold. The standard is done at 35 degrees centigrade outside temperature with 40% humidity. Where would you wear a jacket in those conditions?
Quite.
Right, and the thing is, I wrote to the Advertising Standards Authority. Right, I'll tell you how bad it is.
Please, yes.
And I got a letter back saying that, the average British person thinks guaranteed to keep you dry means nothing to do with sweat going out, but to keeping the people dry from rain. But their, the advertising material shows the breathability, the sweat going out. It doesn't happen.
Is it a question then, perhaps, of making sure the regulators as well as the relevant ministers understand that there needs to be you would advocate a tighter regulation, as it were, and at least making sure that people can't perhaps get away with saying things are not necessarily accurate.
But the problem is, it's the big companies who are in the standards bodies. For example, the fire suit, right? It is very, very bad. People get, the firemen get burnt and they say boil in the bag syndrome. It's not. It's the fabric that they make, and what happens with the steam from outside going into the garment. This is 30. I mean, I was talking to a fire chief some time ago. And he says, this never happened in the 60s and 70s. But you see, it didn't matter. But, I even, wrote to, the Prime Minister, what's her name?
That was Theresa May, yeah.
Theresa May. And basically, she says, you'll have to take it to various people, various civil servants. I thought, what's the point? This is the money the government is spending for nothing.
And
whether it's NHS or the fire service, the police, the whole lot.
It must with that point the point you've made there, Rube. It's one I think that you can certainly take a little further, can't you? And do wonder. And I know we're meant to be talking about politics anyway.
No, but the thing is, I even wrote to the BBC. They didn't want to get involved.
No, well, it really, that may well be because they're some of the beneficiaries of the taxpayers' money as well. And if it is this question of ostensibly spending taxpayers' money, it's something to be looked at quite seriously.
That's right. Yes. This is what I'm saying. I mean, I'll tell you the worst one. The MOD decided to increase the breathability from 60% to 80%. And I asked at the meeting, I said, why are you doing something stupid and spending all this money, and I'd rather give it to the soldiers rather than giving, rubbish garments.
Absolutely right. And I think it's this, and you've hit the nail on the head, I think, Rube. It's this question of procurement.
Yeah.
And there is, whether it's the fire service or indeed the army, there is a serious question as to whether the people currently in those positions really do have the right expertise, and they may well not.
I don't think it's anything to do with it. It's basic corruption. I can prove that.
Yeah.
I can prove it very well because I have gone to see these people.
Yes.
And they don't want to. They just look at it and that's it.
Well, it's a situation that I think in the next couple of months is going to be looked at much more seriously, especially with what may well be an emergency budget. They might start looking at different suppliers, hopefully, as well. Now, we've already really touched upon it in this case, then, Rube, but given you are a businessman that deals obviously not just with manufacturing in Britain, but indeed in the Indian subcontinent as well.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the state of British politics, as it were, if we're leaving the Customs Union and Common Market? How, if anything, will that affect, do you think, your business in terms of continued trade with India and Sri Lanka?
No, I don't see any problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this is all scaremongering. I mean, I was talking to, because I do business in Germany and places like that.
Yes.
I mean, the Germans are so, worried. And there was I don't know whether you've seen, there was a television broadcast by one of the German MPs saying how bad, this whole thing was. And Germany itself going to lose about 15% of their GDP.
Yes, I think there's a people have become perhaps so obsessed with the issue that they've started to panic themselves.
Yeah, it's just scaremongering. It's it's like everything else. You see, the thing is, Britain, we were a manufacturing country.
Yes.
And then now today it's controlled by the bankers. Now, for example, Germany is still a manufacturing country.
Far more so.
Yeah, I mean, this is the whole trouble. The bankers have, taken control of Britain, and that's, I was listening to Mark Carney. It's nothing but scaremongering.
No, and I think with Mark Carney's term in office now coming to an end, I as the rumours are here, and his replacement may well be someone that does take quite a different opinion and has a different outlook to him, and I think that might be quite refreshing for the whole.
That's true, yes. It's like Now, we manufacture garments in Scotland. Now, the First Lady.
Oh, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, yeah.
Yeah, she's wearing a North Face garment that is made in, done from America. I mean, the problem, we have it, whereas German or French, they stick to buying
their own products.
German goods and French goods, whereas we, just have no idea, we just go and buy what the marketing says.
You're right. In some ways, we're spoiled. I know in Germany, it's hard to spot cars, that aren't BMWs and Audis. In France, everybody does drive a Peugeot.
That's right, yes.
And speaking, though, in fact, of the First Minister of Scotland, I know that as we speak this week, a new poll's come out from Lord Ashcroft discussing Scottish independence again. And it shows a small majority in favour of that. Is that something you've got a feeling up there for, Rube, that things are shifting again in that direction?
I don't think so. I mean, the thing is, the problem is the people who want to stay, united with England, they should say, why do we want to go and worship the Germans and the French when we can't even speak their language?
Absolutely. It's a bizarre situation.
Madam Sturgeon wants to join the EU. Right?
Yes. And then it is perhaps a little paradox, isn't it, when she says that she doesn't want to belong to a larger country. She doesn't want to take orders from London, but she's more happy to, probably inevitably perhaps join the Euro and Schengen the other way around.
Yeah, and she got to listen to the Germans and the French.
Absolutely. Now, we are almost running out of time. I just wanted to ask you if there's, maybe it's a bit of an unfair question, but you've been in business now for a good number of years. What would you say has been your guiding principle that has led to your success, do you think?
Basically, innovations. I mean, we won 2 Queen's Award for innovations.
And I think that the history of the company has shown over and over again how well you have raised standards on that front.
Yeah, basically, what we do is, we keep looking at innovations. That's what we do.
And finally, I know your own story is I think it's fair to say, a fairly inspirational one. What would you say to young people today? You're age 23 when you first came from Sri Lanka. What would you say to people that age that are looking to start an entrepreneurial career or career in manufacturing like yourself?
Basically, concentrate and have a vision. You got to have a vision. Without having a vision, you can't do anything. You can't hallucinate and achieve achieve anything. It's a vision that is very, very important. Having a path, and then working on going to achieve what you want to achieve.
And I think it's a powerful message to view your life in terms of missions. And clearly yours has been a series of successful ones. Rube, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for talking to me. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
I hope you all enjoyed our chat with Rube, and especially learning more about the challenges facing the sector and how the whole team at the Ardmel Group are continuing to raise standards. A business and a man with a story that is quite inspirational. If you haven't heard it before, coming up now is our conversation with the Parliamentary Review's co-chairman, David Blunkett. Lord Blunkett served as Home and Education Secretaries in Tony Blair's cabinet before receiving a peerage in 2015. Outside of politics, he's the Vice President of the Royal National Institute of Blind People and the National Alzheimer's Society. And when he has the time, he can be found cheering on his team, Sheffield Wednesday. I hope you enjoy listening as much as I enjoyed speaking to David. Here it is now.
We're now joined by Lord Blunkett. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're very welcome.
Now, it would probably be remiss of me if I didn't start, given the recent events in Parliament. I didn't ask you, given your 32 years in that place, about your thoughts regarding the unprecedented situation I think the public are looking at the minute.
Well, I think I see it very much like Joe Public. I see it as though I'm looking at something that is made up, that is scripted, that is like almost a sci-fi film where anything can happen and then anything does happen. And I'm very sad about that because I think that it's damaged our parliamentary democracy. I think that it's brought politics into disrepute, and I think it's created anger on all sides, whether people were strongly in favour of remaining or whether they were, as we call them, Brexiteers.
Absolutely. And given that situation, whether it's going to be a general election, many people are beginning to worry about how apathy taking effect.
Well, I'm worried about two things. Apathy in the respect of turnout and whether people vote, and anger and, if you like, the friction developed into a failure to be able to have a democratic dialogue, so that the respect that we have for each other, that the way in which we debate issues is often now broken down, and there's abuse in the street, not just of people because they're considered to be different or foreign, but because people recognize they have a different point of view. Now, that is new. I've been around in formal politics now for, goodness, almost all my adult life, because I was elected to a local authority in my city of Sheffield when I was 22. And I've never seen that. I've seen people get very annoyed, and that's fine, and people should get angry, but I've never experienced them display it in such personal venom before. And we need to calm that, because our democracy depends on people being able to have genuine disagreements and differences and to work them through the political process. Otherwise, we fall, as history teaches us, into the hands of extremists.
Absolutely. And given that you've just said what you just said, a lot of people are talking now about whether the party structure, which does exist at the minute, it can survive. We've seen both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party showing signs of buckling.
I think the political system the party system will survive. It may have a very rocky time in the near future, but I think it'll right itself. But it will only do that if political parties themselves sort out what's going on internally. I think both major parties have been, to use an old phrase, infiltrated. Came across a prominent minister just outside the cabinet whose current chair of their Conservative Association was the UKIP candidate against him back in 2015. We know about the challenges within the Labour Party and the way in which people who were thrown out of the party have either been able to or are seeking to rejoin. And so we've got this two-ender, if you like, the bread in the two sides of the sandwich coming together, and the middle is being squeezed. Now, there's academic work to say that actually the electorate aren't all that keen on centre parties, particularly at the moment. And I think we need to be wary of believing that the creation of some sort of centrist party in Britain would solve the problem. It would temporarily, but it wouldn't resolve the differences that people have and how we work them through.
A lot of people have been suggesting recently that the only way out of this situation is with a second referendum. And I'm right in saying that you have quite reluctantly come to that position yourself.
It took me a very long time to come to the conclusion that we would need an affirmative vote. I resisted it because I come from and represented an area deeply disaffected, feeling the effects of deindustrialization and then the austerity measures on the back of the global meltdown, and felt in my bones, which is why I wasn't one of those who thought we were easily going to win the referendum for Remain in 2016, that you need to deal with the underlying problems and causes of that disaffection. And the simple slogan, "They didn't hear you the first time, tell them again," could be very effective, a kind of Trumpian slogan that could be adopted by those who are very, very vehement Brexiteers. However, I think given the state that we're in, I came to the conclusion a few weeks ago, and I wrote in the Daily Telegraph, that I think the only way to deal with this is to get an agreement for this interim period, because that's what it is, a transition from where we are to where we might be, and then put that to the British people. And if the British people don't like that negotiated agreement, either Theresa May's original or something that emerges from the discussions and the debate and the toing and froing between the two major parties, put that to the electorate and give them a chance 3 years on from 2016 to make a new choice as to whether that's what they want to go for, that's the direction they want to take, or whether they'd like to take a step back and remain in the European Union.
And do you think that the people of Sheffield that did vote leave, many of whom voting for the first time in decades or the first time ever, do you think that they would feel maybe slightly frustrated at the call for a second vote?
Yes, I think they would. And I think we just have to be really honest about that. There would be a great deal of frustration, bordering on anger, people saying, we gave you the message, why didn't you just do it? And we have to be straight with them. The reason it's been complex, the reason it's taken this time, the reason that we are in the undoubted mess we're in, is because it wasn't simple. You didn't, as some people thought, sign a bit of paper and walk away. This is a complex, interconnected, economically, socially, in terms of our trade and our relationships, not just within the European Union, but with the European Union's agreements across the world. This is a complex issue. And to pretend otherwise is not to give people what they want, it's to patronize them and say, yes, we don't think you were wrong. We don't think that you got it wrong when you thought it was a simple way out. I think you just have to be straight with them, and they'll be angry. I mean, people are angry with me when I walk around in my own constituency and say, what are you up to? And I say, I'm up to trying to speak the truth. I'm up to trying to say it as it is, as I always have done.
Absolutely. Now, given all of that, one would expect the governing party to perhaps be somewhere between 20 points and to 30 points behind the opinion polls, but they are not. And there has been an awful lot of criticism of the leadership of the opposition regarding that. Would you have any advice for the leadership of your party?
Well, I think belatedly, from the beginning of April, the two parties realised that they were going to sink separately if they didn't actually try and make an effort and at least display some endeavour to work together. I think had there been two different leaders post-2016 referendum, this would have happened a great deal earlier. It hasn't, but it can now. And it is remarkable that in the circumstances that the government have found themselves, not just in not being able to get the kind of deal that some people wanted, not even being able to hold all their party together, but actually being totally riven publicly with cabinet responsibility having broken down, to find themselves only marginally behind, or even on opinion polls through March, marginally in front of the Labour Party, is astonishing. And once this period is over, I think Labour will need to take a very long, hard look at why the British people have not turned, as they often do, to what is called Her Majesty's opposition. There are very complex reasons for that, including the fact that the leadership of the party have only realised, I think, very, very recently, that you have to reach out to people whose views you don't agree with, and you have to win them over to something more than the issues and the policies and the ideology you thought of in the first place.
And on that point, you'll be aware, certainly, that the Parliamentary Review itself has been dedicated to showcasing leadership in all its forms across the country. Now, speaking to many of our contributors, they have made clear that they do feel that leadership has been lacking, both from the government and opposition, as you've said. in your many years in politics, is there a time in certainly recent history where there has been perhaps a leadership vacuum like we're seeing today?
I think we find in Britain an interesting paradox. People want strong leaders, but they want leaders that listen and are responsive. And the two don't always go together. I've lived through the period of both Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair, two leaders who knew what they wanted to do and were prepared to put it on the line. I've lived through Ted Heath and John Major, who were less clear. Ted Heath on Europe, yes, but not on much else. John Major really trying to mop up after the controversial and divisive Thatcher era, where they showed a different style of leadership. Now, they were portrayed as being weak. I don't think that's always the case. I think that you can have leaders who are very clear what they want to do, but to turn on its head the Marxist slogan, speak softly and walk with a big stick, they can actually do the job clearly and decisively. Clem Attlee was such a person, and in many ways so is Harold Macmillan. And those are the kind of leaders where you don't get bombast, you don't get, I know best and I'm going to push this through, but you actually get someone who can genuinely create a coalition of the willing, but has a clear idea about their values. And I hope we'll return to that.
Absolutely. And I think one of the strengths of the review has always been its sense of bipartisanship.
Well, I think Parliamentary Review does something very interesting. It provides a platform for people to share and express their views, and I hope we're going to be able to build on that even more so that people can interconnect with each other. But it also gives an opportunity for parliamentarians to know that people are taking interest in what they're doing and how they're doing it, and therefore to get the message that they've got to reflect outwards. We need both. We need the input into the system. We need voices. We need ideas. We need experiences through Parliamentary Review inwards, but we also need to ensure that the way in which our politics works is reflected outwards, so that people firstly understand how the system works, secondly the complexity and difficulty of it, and thirdly the way in which they need to tell us, I mean I'm in the upper house now, but to tell us as parliamentarians what they think and where we're going wrong, and for us to listen.
Absolutely. And on that point, you've been in public service for most of your life, Arnold Blunkett, ever since Sheffield City Council. I mean, in that time, what are the key lessons you think you've learned in the best way for policymakers and those at the coalface to communicate and work together?
I've learned that actually there is enormous wisdom out there, and if you're prepared to engage and to listen, then your views might actually change. Mine have on a number of issues, particularly social issues, what small L liberal issues over the years, going in the opposite direction, it has to be said, to most people as they age. And you need to ensure that you've reached out to sufficient people to create that coalition that allows you to make progress, and that you won't create everything you want and change everything you want for the better overnight. It will never happen. There's no days though where everything's done and we can all wash our hands of it and that's fine. We build building blocks. We stand, if you like, historically on the shoulders of those who came before us. And if we get that message, we won't be too frustrated when everything doesn't happen immediately, but we'll be determined to make progress, and we'll punish politically, democratically, those who don't.
Absolutely. And perhaps finally, with that concluding point, it's fair to say, as you've already mentioned, a lot of the population are frustrated, no matter how they vote in the referendum or their general political opinions. But perhaps, for those people, is there something you'd point to be optimistic, looking towards the future about?
I think I'm very clear. We're a great nation. We can't just do things on our own. We have to recognise that we live in an incredibly rapidly growing global environment, and the power sources and the power politically has changed over the last 20, 30 years. But we are creative, we are innovative, and we will pull through, and we'll do it because we won't have anyone else to blame anymore if we come out of the European Union, and we'll need to literally pull our socks up and do it ourselves. In the end, my message is clear. Nothing is ever as good as it seems at the time, and nothing is ever as bad. And we've come through difficult times in the past, and we'll come through again.
Lord Blunkett, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan.
As always, it's been a pleasure interviewing and learning from our guests. I hope you all enjoyed listening. Until next time, I'm off to the Windsor Castle to raise a glass to raising standards. Goodbye.
Thank you very much for listening to our podcast. You can find every episode on iTunes, YouTube, and Spotify. The views expressed by guests in each podcast are their own. They do not represent the opinions of the Parliamentary Review, Westminster Publications, Lord Pickles, Lord Blunkett, David Curry, or any other guests on the podcast. If you'd like to know more about the Parliamentary Review, please visit our website at www.theparliamentaryreview.co.uk.